So our first speaker today is Vicki Thorn. Vicki earned a bachelor's degree in psychology and has extensively studied the science of fertility and hormones. Vicki has spoken internationally on the topics of biochemistry of sex, gender, and attachment. She will discuss how ingestion of chemicals can distort attraction of the sexes, describe differences in male-female brains, and explain how pheromones attract attention. Please welcome Vicki Thorn.
Is this on? It is. We're good to go. Well, I want to thank everyone here for the opportunity to be with you again. I've been here in other Iowa cities, but I really believe, and this is my lived experience, that this day is a day changer for you guys. There's going to be stuff you're going to hear that you have never heard before. There's going to be stuff that you're going to think about that never crossed your mind before. And it's going to empower you to be able to speak about how we're made in a way that you've never done before. And I just want to share a brief story. I was out talking at a college in Virginia, and before I started speaking, this man came up to me, a young man, and he said, "I've heard you speak 4 times. I said, "Really? Why?" He said, "Because I hear something different every time. This is interesting." So he disappeared into the crowd. And as we were leaving, we were walking across this little footbridge, and there were 3 women with me, and here's this guy giving my talk to another guy on the other side of the bridge. I thought, good, that's how you plant seeds. And he felt comfortable doing it. So the material today I think you're going to find is, one, it's outside the box. It's politically incorrect, but it's scientifically true. And we live in a society where we're buried in stuff that is politically incorrect, and we aren't allowed to talk about it, all right? But if we are people who are teaching, who are living, we need to be conscious of exactly how our body works. We need to know this as couples, we need to know this as individuals, we need to know this as parents, to be able to help our daughters grow through their fertility, to help our sons grow through their fertility, and to respect our fertility. Because we live in a society now where fertility is deeply damaged, okay? The advent of the pill really began this. And nobody told us what the pill did to us. We were just told this was safe and it was benign and, you know, it's wonderful, now you can plan your families. But they didn't tell us the rest of it. And I'll share with you, when we were first married, we had gone through marriage prep and everything, and the priest and the couple said, "Oh, the pill's fine. There's no problem with that." And I took it for a very short time, and I had horrendous migraine headaches. And my doctor just sort of kept patting me on the hand and saying, there, women get migraine headaches. Well, I never had them before. And one day I went to see a different doctor. I don't know why, but for some reason, and he said, "You have migraines?" I said, "Yes." He said, "You're on the pill." I said, "Yes." He said, "Get off it now. You are a stroke risk." Scared the bejeebers out of me. I got off it. And that's part of what set my interest in terms of this. What have we not been told? Okay. We are in a society where we believe that sex is without consequence because the pill keeps us from getting pregnant. And if we get pregnant, we can have an abortion. And nobody talks about the long-term consequences of those. I've spent my life caring for women and men who've lost their children to abortion. And that came about because a friend of mine in high school had had an abortion before it was legal. Her mother arranged it for her. We went to a day school, boarding school in Minnesota. And I was a year older, and I have no brothers and sisters, and she just had one brother, and she became my little sister. She was a boarding student. And abortion wasn't on my chart. I mean, it really wasn't talked about. And she got pregnant, and it turned out there was incest in the family. Her brother was the father of that baby. And it turned out that I didn't know this, she'd already had a baby, placed it for adoption. And then she had the abortion. And it destroyed her. I never knew what to say to her. And it stayed with her for years. And as I went to college, that was something that was in the back of my head. I started out as a medical student, going into pre-med. And then I decided I wanted to go into psych because I wanted to figure out what was going on with my friend. And then as God moves these things, we went from Minneapolis to Milwaukee. We met a cousin of my husband's, and they were kind of like our parents. They had no children, and we spent a lot of time with them. In the second year, in the summers, we were back in Minnesota because Bill was working on his dissertation. I get a call from someone I've never heard of in Milwaukee, offered me a job, working for the diocese, talking about some of the reproductive issues involved in the pill. And what they really wanted me to do was the kind of legal law stuff. Well, that's not of interest to me. It's not my cup of tea, and I didn't know anything about it. So I declined, and then I said to Bill after the first phone call, what kind of idiot would hire someone sight unseen? I'm not even qualified for that job. Then he offered it to me again, and I turned it down again. Then he offered it to me again, and I said, okay, but we have a baby due in March, and I was to start in January. If it's a fussy baby, I quit. Oh, that was fine. Well, if any of you have worked in the church, you know that if there's a vacuum, you get sucked into it. And I was suddenly the Respect Life director. Now, we didn't have one at that point. I mean, this is right after the legalization of abortion. But it was much more to my liking. I could do the legislation, but I could take care of women. I could teach, okay? And the bishops had called for a ministry of healing for women who'd had abortions. And that really spoke to my heart, okay? So that's just a little bit of background. And how this particular part of my interest came about was that we have 6 children. And when we had our 4th child, I met a woman who lived in our neighborhood, and they had about the same number of kids we did, and we got to be good friends. And when we both had 5th children, and then we had our 6th children, we were pregnant. And they were born within 24 hours. We're both in the hospital. I got there first. Our daughter was born first. So her birthday is March 24th. John's is March 25th because he took a nap. But I was like, what is this about? I mean, accident? No, I discovered it's not accident at all. It's how it used to work in our culture. We women birthed at the same time. This is a long time ago. Why? We didn't have formula. We didn't have doctors. If something happened to me, the only way my baby would survive is if there was another woman in my community who could nurse my baby. And it had to be close, because toddler milk and newborn milk is not the same. And now I was hooked, okay? Wow, this is so interesting, holy cow. So the more I learned, the more annoyed I got, because nobody told any of us this stuff, and we don't know it. And so, again, our culture, really starting with the pill, has changed in so many ways, because women on the pill do not cycle together, okay? They're on a sort of an artificial kind of system that, when you quit taking the pill and you get your period, blah, blah, blah. Well, that moved us out of where we were supposed to be. We women no longer smelled fertile. That meant that our husbands started looking at porn because there was no stimulus there, all right? Fertility dropped because the longer I'm on the pill, the less likely I am to be able to get pregnant and carry a healthy pregnancy. Did you know that if you're on the pill, you pick the wrong partner, biologically? Nobody tells us that. It's critical. Because I pick a partner who's too much like my father or my brother in terms of genetic system, and fertility is a challenge. And if I go off the pill, I no longer find him attractive. 80% of divorces are started by women, all right? Those are just things that have just really outraged me in many respects, okay? And it's gone on and on. Now we need in vitro fertilization. We need sperm donors. We need other ways to get pregnant because the way God made it doesn't work anymore, okay? And I'm going to touch on most of these things as we go along here. And I'm going to go fast, so hang on, all right? But we need to speak the truth to the lies. We need to confront them. We need to know these things, because if we don't, the society is going to crash and burn. If you look at the demographics around the world, babies are falling like crazy. The numbers are so low. excuse me, there are several European countries worried about the fact that they don't have enough people to replace them, okay? Some of them are instituting very nice programs so that if you have babies, you get extra money, you get extra help with your rent, all kinds of things, because the demographics are broken. And that's important for us to recognize, okay? In China, for many years, we had numbers, huge numbers of abortions. If you were of one of the particular groups there, you were only allowed one child, okay? If you got pregnant, it was a forced abortion, and you were penalized. Okay, you lost your house, you lost your job. We were there at one point when this was still going on, and it was unbelievable, okay? Now, they've discovered they're gonna be gone because the numbers are so low. And so now, thank you, they've started offering incentives for this particular group to have more children, okay? But it's one of those slippery slopes. Once you've reached that point, are people going to consider it valuable to do it? You have to make it worth their while now. Children used to have value just because they were our children, okay? And now that got lost, okay? You know, the gift of womanhood, we don't celebrate. To be a woman, I have to be like a man. Really, think about that. And FYI, I'll come back and touch on this again briefly later, but if you're on the pill, your brain begins to grow as a male brain. It's no longer a female brain. There are things that change. If you go off the pill, it will go back. But we aren't told this stuff. Men see things differently than we do, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute, but that awareness that we're called to cooperate with God in bringing new life into the world. Men don't have that gift in terms of actually physically carrying their child. It's different, okay? You know, we need to understand that as women we're unique and as men we're unique, and that this unisex business is a lie. It's a lie. It doesn't work, all right? And that we are changed radically by a pregnancy, and I'm going to talk about that. And this awareness of how the dance of life goes on, when we're pregnant, the baby's in charge of that pregnancy, ladies, okay? It's the baby who decides when it's going to be born. It's the baby who's given us chemistry. Yes, we're giving chemistry to the baby too, but we used to think it was sort of a sealed system. You know, there's that little person living in there, but there wasn't this dance. It's all wrong. This is just an open freeway of communication between baby and mother. And the things that we haven't been told about, the fact that if I have my first baby and I nurse, I get protection from breast cancer very significantly. If I have my baby later, or if I have an abortion first, that protection is not there. We aren't told that. It's important for us to know those things so we can share them with other people as well, okay, to talk about this. And just some of the things that we, don't necessarily know about. I want to share one of the first things here. Okay, it's called microchimerism. What does that mean? It means that mothers carry cells from every baby they ever conceived the rest of their lives, whether the child is alive or not. And if the baby is miscarried or aborted, she actually carries more cells from those children than the others, as starting many times with 500,000. These cells morph in our bodies into brain cells and liver cells and other things. And if our partner is the proper partner, meaning the partner we would pick not on the pill, which I'll say something about again in just a second, those cells appear to help me heal. They gather where I have illness in my body. And sometimes things just disappear. If, on the other hand, my partner is the one I would have picked if I was on the pill, I may be very prone to autoimmune disease because the cells of my partner, of this child, okay, are too much like me. And my body can't discriminate. It's not quite me, but it's kind of like me. Must be something wrong in the body. That's incredible when you think about it. So mothers get cells from their babies by 4 weeks into the pregnancy. Fathers know we're pregnant, if they're with us, by 4 weeks when the cells are in our body and our scent changes, and he recognizes it as pregnancy. He couldn't necessarily articulate it, but he recognizes it. And his chemistry starts changing and will change throughout the pregnancy. The baby gets cells from us by 13 weeks, okay? But they stay there. It's awesome, okay? How many of you have older siblings? Yeah, guess whose cells you carry? Mom gave them to you in the pregnancy. You have biological cells from your older siblings that you carry in your body. Now, this is also a gift for mothers. If you're doing ministry with women who've lost their children through miscarriage or abortion, to say to them, you still have cells. Lost, but not gone. It's a powerful gift. And motherhood is not in this little box of, I'm pregnant, I'm not pregnant, it's gone. No, wrong. It is with us for the rest of our lives. And that's really awesome when you think about it. A little scary. Usually people, when I ask that question about if they have older siblings, do one of those like, oh, I didn't really want her to tell me that. But, okay, that knowledge of how God built his family is an important piece for us to be conscious of, okay? That awareness of how we recognize pregnancy is important, okay? The baby is in charge of that pregnancy from conception on. The baby's got chemistry going on that's making communication with us. And again, we don't necessarily know that. Now, there's another piece here, and that is this. Again, interconnection. If grandma had something happen that was traumatic or illness related when she was pregnant with mom, you may have fallout from that, all right? This is called epigenetic inheritance. Because all the ovum mom had were present by 20 weeks into her pregnancy before she was born, all right? The intergenerational linkage is very, very complex, and we don't know about it. And that's important for us to realize because, again, we all think we're tough, rugged individuals and there's no interconnections, and the reality is there's an awful lot of stuff going on here in terms of communication and other things that are there, okay? Now, in terms of men and women, let me go back 1 minute here. I want to say something about this microchimerism, those cells that I talked to you about. First off, I want to read you a little part of a paragraph, and this is from a health journal, okay, an international scholarship research. It says, early termination from surgical abortion can deliver up to 500,000 nucleated fetal cells into a woman's circulation. The article continues, microchimerism does not require the fetus to be male, but it's easier to distinguish the Y chromosome as a biomarker. Interestingly, male microchimerism has been found in 1/5 of women with no male births. This can occur in a number of ways, including early miscarriage of a male embryo, a vanished male twin, male cell transfer from an older sibling through the maternal circulation to a later pregnancy, or a yet unexplored possibility, that of male DNA transfer to the woman's circulation from sexual intercourse. Finally, and this is another article, the authors note, fetal microchimerism may be one piece of a subtle and dizzyingly complex puzzle. Cell traffic is actually bidirectional, with the fetus receiving cells from the mother. Fetal cells from maternal tissues may cross the placental barrier during subsequent pregnancies, potentially influencing the health of later offspring. To further complicate matters, cells from later fetuses can also cross the placenta to enter the microchimeric area, perhaps introducing sibling rivalries for the mother's limited resources. We live in a society where women have multiple partners. We live in a society where women have multiple conceptions with different partners. That can be a serious issue, and no one talks about it. If I have intercourse with a male for 15 hours, assuming we are not using a condom, my body is absorbing the seminal fluid from that male. He doesn't have to be my husband. Any male. We are biologically changed by that, people. It takes 6 months of exposure to the seminal fluid and sperm of my husband for my body to make the full adaptation. Having had multiple partners might cause some issues in terms of infertility, because my body has made a partial adaptation, but the guys don't match in terms of this. Our systems are incredibly complex and sensitive. And these are things that we aren't told about, and they're very, very significant in terms of our body and our health, okay? They're things we need to be aware of. Now, I want to take just a couple minutes and talk about men and women. We're not the same. Again, politically incorrect talk, but you can blame it on me. If I were going to draw an image of a male brain in terms of how it functions, I would draw it like this. Men, for the most part, have the ability to be absolutely single-focused. Your lives depended on it, because when you were out hunting with the other guys in a hunting party, if you lost focus, you might not come back, and that would be the end of your why. You had to be absolutely focused. Men resolve differences, usually like at the end of the day, because their life depended on that guy the next day. If we're doing battle with each other, he might just up and kill me, all right? We're out in the woods, who would know? It's a different mindset. But guys can focus, okay? And so their thought process has to, like go through all the boxes. And there's a box in here that we women don't have. It's called the empty box. Gentlemen in the room, you familiar with it? Yeah. You talk to him? Nobody's home. Dear, did you hear me? Huh? Huh? What did you say? All right. He needed this to keep him to be able to recuperate when he was out hunting. At the end of the day, the guys would do fire gazing. Build a nice fire, sit side by side, conversation, no, not really. Just there, okay? Sports on TV have some relationship to that. They can be totally engrossed in that. But the awareness that men were hunters and they were away. And it changed how they had to deal with each other. Their lives depended on each other. We women, our body, our minds, we're multitaskers. And so we can keep track of the fact that the kid, the 3-year-old's gone outside, the dog has thrown up, okay, the male isn't here yet, and I need to go to the bathroom. And usually we don't lose anybody in that, do we? We can do that. We lived in the village. We had the children. We fed them. And then our husband would come back. Now, interestingly, ladies, we cycle together under those circumstances. We get our periods at the same time. It takes about 3 months for that to be established, all right? But that had to do with the fact that we birthed at the same time. So there were other women who could nurse our babies. If we died, there was someone who could care for our baby. And when the men came home, there wasn't so much temptation because all the wives were fertile at the same time. When they came home, and we have other things going on, I might be tempted to be unfaithful because my wife is on the pill and there's this cute woman at the office who's not. Now, could I articulate that to you as a man as to why I'm attracted to her? No, I couldn't. but it's biology, all right? So that difference in men and women is one that's very real. If you look at brain scans, you know, if you find books, and there's tons of stuff out there, you'll see that men's brains are wired differently. They tend to be more front to back, okay? Ours tend to be more side to side. Why is that critical? Because this is process, all right? We need to know if we're dealing with young women, all right? Teenagers, not just women, teenagers 11 to 19, the prefrontal cortex of the brain is not turned on, people. It is being rewired. They operate out of the amygdala, fear, flight, fright. This isn't careful consideration being given to whether I should have sex or whether I should have an abortion. This is what's going to keep me alive, all right? We need to understand that. And our brain doesn't finish until age what? 25, 26, sometimes in men, a little later. What comes on board then? The ability to process this way. So if I have trauma, I can't process the trauma until my brain finishes. If we're doing ministry with someone who's had an abortion or had a trauma, we need to understand that. It's not that we don't minister to them. It's just that our expectation is we know they're not going to be able to completely finish until later. Okay? There's something that we need to be aware of. But those things are important, okay? In terms of what men and women see and how they process, there's a big difference, okay? Just in terms of colors. Men like dark colors and blue. We like bright colors, right? Men hear some things better than others, okay? We hear different things. We're attuned to children. We're attuned to immediate threat. They're hunters. They're listening for the big stuff, okay? There's so much that's different, you know. Boys prefer trucks and boy toys. And as I said, this is politically incorrect, but it's true. And we can't get all bent out of shape because a boy might decide he's going to play with a doll for a little while or a girl's going to play with a truck. That's normal exploration. It's normal, okay? We have become so hypersensitized to all of this that it's gotten very confusing, all right? Now, also, this relationship between men and women is, let me back up one moment here. Okay, one other thing. We women are XX. We have two X's. They act independently in your body. So your liver might be X1, your kidney might be X2, all right? Men are XY. There's 3,500 to 6,000 genes on that X, but there's only 72 on the Y. It does something totally different. Men are the more fragile of the two sexes because these double X's protect us, all right? The brain is different, the body is different, and we need to be conscious of that, okay? On this very elemental level, all right? Now, this awareness of that interaction between men and women is something else that I want to spend a little time on. Now, just a piece of worthless, information. A 10-second kiss is long enough to transfer 80 million bacteria. We are bonded to the people that we exchange intimacy with on many levels. And kissing isn't one of the ones we would think about, is it? And yet that reality of the change that happens in our bodies is really important. And to be conscious of those different pieces that are there, okay? Now, we need to understand that different pieces change things here, and I want to take just a minute to talk about living together, about cohabitation. Everybody's doing it, right? What's the big deal? Well, here's the big deal. One, if I'm on the pill, I've picked the wrong partner. We're going to have intimacy problems. And he is not going to find me necessarily ongoingly attractive because the pill doesn't allow me to send fertility messages. It changes my body. Condoms, if we're using condoms, get in the way of sexual bonding. I need to be exposed to his seminal fluid and sperm for my body to make the adaptation to this is my partner, okay? So when we are interfering with those things, it changes things. There's the chemistry of bonding that's there. We need to get to the point of oxytocin. There's two different pieces that I'll talk about in just a minute. But that really deep bonding is that long-term bonding of oxytocin. People who are cohabiting are much more depressed, and they don't see sex as being as good. They're 3 times more likely to be depressed than couples who are married. They're less enthusiastic about marriage. Affairs are twice as likely to be common amongst those that are living together. All right? There are more fights. There's more physical and sexual abuse. If you look at the statistics, it's got the highest rate of domestic violence. 3/4 of the kids with live-in parents will see them split before age 16. And only 1/3 of those who are married will see the same thing. Also tragic, okay? So this awareness that there are many pieces here that are not what they should be. And I want to say a word about pornography. I just want to read you a little something from a magazine talking about porn. And it says, a growing number of young men now say that their porn diet has impaired their sexuality and led to performance issues in the bedroom or porn-induced erectile dysfunction. Used to instant gratification and ever-changing novelty of porn videos, up to 1/3 of men under 40 have suffered erectile dysfunction when faced with a real-life woman, according to several studies. These young men feel like they have unwittingly been guinea pigs in a large, unmonitored, decades-long experiment. And the consensus for many is that that it was literally a downer. The awareness of that being there is something else that we have to know, all right? One other thing I want to touch on again just briefly. We have to know that when males are engaged in homosexual relationships, there can be some serious cancer and other disease issues. And I'm not going to go into this at length. There is a book by Dr. E. Tyler, who's written a rather extensive book on this, called The Other Guy's Sperm, The Cause of Cancers and Other Diseases. But what I want to say to you is that when we deviate from God's plan, it's not like nothing's happening. Our bodies are not designed for this, and we need to be conscious of the differences that happen there, okay? It's very important. Now, as we talk about differences in the human body here amongst men and women, let's take just a minute. And this is the uterus, all right? And this is the whole tubal area, okay? Now, when sperm enters the woman's body, it's not capable of fertilizing an egg. Did you know that? And there's 3 kinds of sperm. And so there's the kind of sperm that'll fertilize. There are blockers. And there are killers. Named by a guy in England, all right? The blockers, they fill in areas here in the cervix so that the egg getters, which are the fertilizers here, egg getters, can get through. But they have to sit in our body for a number of hours and be changed. And what happens is that now the head of the sperm, and they look different by the way, the head of the sperm is capable of penetrating an ovum. Prior to that, it is not. It also changes the way it swims. When they come in, they're sort of helter-skelter. But once they undergo this process, they swim with intent. And there are millions of sperm that come into the body. Millions. Now, I have to say that science shows that we are at half the number of sperm we used to be at about 20 years ago. Probably caused by the pill. Why the pill? Because you see, the pill, the chemistry of the pill goes into the water. Where we drink it, our husband drinks it, the fish are now changing into boy-girl fish. and so are some birds. This is a serious issue. We don't know how to get that chemistry out of the water. And when you see the articles written about it, they sort of allude to it, but they don't talk about the fact that that's one of the things they don't know how to get out of there, all right? Having long-term effects on all of us in ways we don't know. So the head of the sperm now is capable of entering an ovum as it moves down, okay? And out of all those out of all those sperm, the ovum goes that one, and the chemistry draws that one to the ovum. Out of the millions. I don't know quite what that's all about, nor do scientists, but they know what happens. Now, what's the issue here? Well, the issue is that if I'm doing IVF, the nice doctor's picking the sperm and injecting it. The sperm is not entering the egg on its own. It's not capacitated. That's an issue, all right? There are so many different pieces here. We have sperm donors who in some cases have had as many as 600 inseminations. A physician in England who had his own sperm clinic. His wife thought they had other donors. He was the sole donor. In that community, how do you know you're not going to meet somebody who's your half-sibling? And ironically, you would be attracted by scent because you would recognize this as somebody you were attracted to that you knew. And unfortunately, there's no red sign in your head that goes, brother, brother, sister, sister, not there. And this is going on all over. There's a case down in Florida. This young man had inseminated 15 people, but hundreds in many cases. What do we do with that? It's not how God intended it to happen, all right? But so this is the case that now the baby's conceived. The baby builds the placenta and implants. And there's communication with mother and baby going on all the time. Two-way street, okay? That's so important. Remember, we carry cells now from every baby we ever conceive. What's going on if I have conceived with other fathers? In terms of not, they're just not the same. What does that do in my body in terms of having an autoimmune response? Because the research that's been done indicates that if I've had multiple partners, I'm more likely to have an autoimmune issue, okay? If I've had one partner, those cells appear sometimes to be able to help heal something. They gather at that site of cancer or a thyroid problem or whatever. Again, much we don't know, but ongoing research in terms of the awesomeness of all of this, okay? Now, so the blocker's role here is to allow those egg getters to get up here. What about the killers? Well, they're benign unless I've had multiple partners in a short period of time, in which case they are all activated from every man I've had sex with, and the intent is to kill the sperm of the other guy. That's an autoimmune issue going on in your body that's pretty profound and can lead you to a couple of very hard to cure sexually transmitted diseases, okay? Because it changes your immune system with this little, sperm war going on. There's actually a book called Sperm Wars, by the way. But to recognize the complexity of this, the beauty of this, that our bodies are changed by this chemistry of this child, by the cells of this child. We are truly one with our partner after that, because that child is partially his. We're carrying the cells of our children, which means we're also carrying the cells of our husband. Very fascinating. Now, let me take quick minute here. I brought some books for you guys to look at. Needless to say, I did not bring all the books in my house, or we would have had to bring a moving trailer. But I just want to mention these, because please take time during the day just to take a look, see if there's something you're interested in. This is called Bumpology, Myth-Busting Pregnancy Book for Curious Parents-to-Be, talking about the changes that happen in our body. And this is another one. It's called, Do Chocolate Lovers Have Sweeter Babies? Okay, same thing, a surprising science of pregnancy. Good presents for your pregnant friends, all right? Sexual chemistry, this has been out for a while. Dr. Ellen Grant, Understanding Our Hormones, the Pill, and HRT, Hormone Replacement Therapy. It's scary what's going on in terms of the environment and in terms of our bodies. This one, The Blessings of the Curse, No More Periods, by Susan Racco, MD, talks about what happens when we use chemistry to get rid of our periods. And what do our periods do for us? Well, there's a number of things, including they get rid of the iron in our body, they reduce our blood pressure. There are just a whole raft of chemistries happening there that we don't think about, okay? This one, Holly Griggs Spalding, Sweetening the Pill, or How We Got Hooked on Hormonal Birth Control. This is just a woman who got really, really, really annoyed when she discovered what the birth control had done for her. And it wasn't good. Very readable. All these are very readable. This one, Tubal ligation and post-tubal ligation syndrome. Who tells us about that? Nobody. It's serious. This one, Is vasectomy worth the risk? A physician's case against vasectomies. We aren't told what this does to men's bodies in terms of triggering, for instance, their autoimmune system. Because in the male system, it's a sealed system, gentlemen, and your sperm never meets your bloodstream. When it does in a vasectomy, you set off autoimmune issues. Because sperm are laden with antibodies so that in our women's bodies, they trigger this adaptation. They're not supposed to be meeting the rest of your body, all right? Vasectomy, the cruelest cut of all, the modern medical nightmare of post-vasectomy pain syndrome. And this one, any of you who have adolescents in your family, your own or otherwise, buy them this book. It's called The Primal Teen, What New Discoveries About Teenage Brains Tell Us About Our Kids. They're different. They're not what we expect. And I encourage you to read it because it was just, I read it after I'd raised my 6. I was like, where the heck was that book when I needed it, you know? But it changes how you deal with them because you're aware of what that brain can and cannot do, all right? And it's really significant science. And again, who talks about it? Nobody, okay? Now, you know, we have to know that when we are ovulating, okay, in our cycle, there's a flow like that, this being ovulation, and over here, if there's pregnancy, the chemistry's all changing, all right? Our spouse knows when we're ovulating because we smell different. Did you know that you dress differently when you ovulate, women? Proven scientific fact. We're much cuter. Got a little décolletage, hair's a little better, makeup's a little more carefully applied. And men perceive not only that, but our scent of fertility. And it's only there for a couple of days. But we don't know about it. And it's important for us to be aware. You know, and someone had talked about the fact that, you know, when we're talking to adolescents, and I've said this to them, you know, if sex seems like a good idea, I have boys and girls in the room, I suggest that you both go home to your separate houses for 24 hours and think about whether you're ready to be a parent or not. Because this is a time of high fertility. If you have sex now, you are likely to conceive. And it's amazing. The boys find that really interesting, and so do the girls, but like nobody's told them that. You know, they sort of assume that there's full fertility at all times, or that there's no fertility at any time. One of the two. We have not been well educated in terms of how our bodies work. And it's important for us to know that, okay? That awareness of how much sperm counts have dropped is very significant. And, you know, the scientists are all scratching their heads. They acknowledge that that chemistry in the water is messing this up. But then they talk about all the other chemistry in the water too, because there must be another problem there, okay? But for us to recognize that this is a major ecological issue. It's an ecological issue for the fish, for the birds, for us. And there's nothing we can do about it. You have no idea whether the water you're drinking, even bottled water, has estrogen in it or not. Much of it does. But so those are pieces for us to just be cognizant of, okay? Now, I want to say a little bit about contraception. Because, again, we've been lied to. We've been told it's safe. There's no real problem. You know, what's the big deal? All right. Well, okay, let's just talk a little bit about some of the things that go on here, all right? The first is, as I said before, I choose a different partner than I would choose if I was not chemically contracepting. I am a big believer in the fact that when priests do marriage prep, they should say to the couple, are you contracepting? And if they say yes, the suggestion should be that you go off contraceptives for a couple of months and see if you still find each other attractive. Because this is a real serious biochemical issue. And they've not been told, they've never heard of it, all right? That's, again, one of those important pieces. Now, that question I alluded to, our brains grow as male brains. Where's the feminine genius in that? It changes how our brains work. And not for the better, because as women, we have that ability to be multitaskers, to see all of what's going on. If my brain's now growing as a male brain, I'm seeing the world differently, okay? You know, this whole question of depression and mood change is huge, okay? 50% of women on contraceptives have depression and mood swings. That if the doctor was honest, he would name as being related to the hormonal input in our bodies, okay? There are nutritional deficiencies as women. If you're on the pill for whatever reason, please do your research. Find out what nutritional deficiencies are there and supplement. Because it messes with your body big time. It causes you to lose your libido. Where's the gift in that? It's supposed to set me free to be this sexual being, and the fact is it causes me to lose interest, again, because the chemistry has changed. There may be pelvic pain, there may be gallbladder issues, there may be blood clots, and I want to underline that one for you. And pardon me while I get teary. My youngest daughter's best friend was killed by the pill. She was a senior in college. She was on the pill for health reasons. She was not sexually active at all. She had really bad cramps. She collapsed on campus one day. They rushed her to the hospital and she was filled with blood clots. Brain, lungs, kidneys, everywhere. They got them out of her brain, they got them out of her lungs, and they could not get them out of the rest of her body. And they told her parents they were going to let her die. And she did. That shouldn't have happened. I can't tell you how often I do one of these talks and somebody in the audience comes up and tells me their story of the blood clot they had, okay? Or series of blood clots. Glaucoma, that's an eye issue. Crohn's disease, that's a gut issue. The fact that our ovaries get old. If you've been on the pill since you're young, in your adolescence, because the doctor puts you on it because of acne or whatever, by 30, your ovaries are old. And you're not producing adequate ovum. And effectively, it's an infertility issue. We aren't told that either. Excuse me, we aren't told that it affects our pituitary gland. Depo-Provera, which is the shot, has a real link to breast cancer. All right? Also, decreased bone density. These are serious issues, and we are not being told. Furthermore, I'm much more likely to get an STD or HIV if I am on chemical contraceptives because it changes the quality of the sperm, or not the sperm, of the cervical mucus that would protect me from that. The incidence of that goes much, much, much higher. In sub-Saharan Africa, where they're using Depo-Provera, HIV has jumped, it's 40% higher now. What an awful sentence for someone in terms of health. You know, so what about hysterectomy? Well, it increases the risk of heart attack and stroke. What about condoms? Well, you know, the problem with condoms is that we women are not absorbing the seminal fluid and the hormones that we're supposed to absorb. Did you know that the hormones in a male body include prostaglandins and include other women hormones that we absorb for at least 15 hours after an active intercourse. It's God's way of making this bond happen biochemically. Nobody tells us that, okay? So that question of what's going on in our bodies. What about vasectomies? Well, they lead to autoimmune diseases in men. Again, because the sperm and the blood meet and they're not supposed to. These are all things that people haven't told us, okay? Sperm counts have dropped as a result of contraception being introduced. In 1973 to 2011, sperm counts fell more than 52%. Okay? Total number of sperm and sperm samples fell 60%. From 1973, there were 99 million sperm in a liter. By 2011, there were 47.1 million. This is a serious issue in terms of fertility for men and women. It's a health issue. And again, we're not being told. The awareness of how important it is for us to be in a position where we can love freely the person that God's called us to love. To understand that healthy sex is good for our body. It changes things in terms of the hormones and all that kind of thing. We haven't been told that, okay? Again, sex is sort of dismissed as this recreational activity, but the reality is that it's part of God's plan, and it's a significant part of God's plan. I just want to say to you that there are people who are really concerned about this, and this is a magazine that comes out of England. What doctors don't tell you. They have a very significant article in here called Dirty Little Pill. And they report the science of what this hormonal biology is doing to our bodies. And it's very scary. And I'm not going to go into it now, but I recommend that you take a look at some of this stuff. This is another, and these are just articles. I'm just going to give you titles because we're done with time. But science proves premarital sex rewires the brain. When scientists create a three-parent baby, they killed 4 unborn children in the process. Because you see, we are now trying to do this. No eggs, no sperm, no womb. This is a science magazine that comes out of England. We are messing with things in ways we don't understand. And here again are just some titles. Independent fertility doctor is accused of impregnating 8 patients. Scientist, quote, or the scientist plural, colon, first baby born with DNA from 3 people. All right. Here's another one talking about the fact that with the sperm donor business, we have all kinds of relationships. This particular person found that she had 44 siblings and counting. She found that many. She knew there were more. This is the British fertility doctor. British man fathered 600 children at his own fertility clinic. That's incredible. What do we do with that information? How do we make sense of it? Okay? Because it's not how God made us. And because we can do it doesn't mean we should do it, because that's one of the questions here. For us to understand that sex is designed as part of our body, as part of our chemistry, in terms of our womb. One of the things here that's interesting is we women have something called spiral arteries. And I don't know exactly where they land, but they're here. They never clot. Their role, when it's time to get your period, is they shut themselves off. When they do that, the lining of the uterus comes away for our period. They turn themselves on, and that's the flow of your period. Did you know that? I just think that's so fascinating. The more we learn about our bodies, the more awesome it is. But for us to be respectful of that, to realize that we live in a society that hasn't taught us this stuff, okay? We don't know it. We're not taught it in marriage prep. We're not taught it in other places. And for us to know it is to be empowered, to speak to other people about it. Those of you in the room who are, you're in a college setting, you're in some kind of classroom setting, this is stuff you can share, okay? It's all available online. If you need stuff, you just, put in one of the search terms and you'll find the material. There's tons of it out there, but it's not being given to us. And we need to have it in order to make good decisions about our bodies, to understand the gift of fertility, to be able to embrace pregnancy, the changes that happen in our body with pregnancy. That question of it protecting us from breast cancer, for starters, is awesome. It's awesome, but anybody told you that before? Probably not, okay? That bond between man and woman, the scent, the pheromones that are there, that exchange of my knowing that this man would be a good partner for me. Now, that's not in my head. I met this guy, and I'm not on the pill, and my heart's going, whoa, what is that about? Okay, well, that's nature saying, excuse me, it could be a possibility. Just pay attention, all right? But we're not told that, again, if I'm on the pill, the man I'm attracted to, in terms of his biology, is very like my brother, much like my brother or my father. That's going to create problems. That's why incest is not a recommended activity, for many reasons, but one of them being that this is not a biological match. This is going to create problems in terms of health, healthy babies, all kinds of things. So, hopefully, you've learned some things you didn't know, all right? We're going to have a panel this afternoon. If any of you have questions in the course of the day that you want to take me aside, please feel free to do so. But it's my hope that in doing this, I've helped to set the day for the rest of our speakers in terms of talking about the whole question of natural fertility. What do we do about it? How do we recognize it? How do we work with it? So I want to thank you all for being here, and I'm available to answer any questions you have. Thank you.